Give us your soul and join the Legion.
Craig Ouellette directs Straight On Till Morning, a 2025 horror thriller in the vein of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, I would say. But I believe this is actually a very loose remake of a 1972 movie of the same name, although there are some differences in regards to plot, so it's more of a very loose remake. So what is the story here? It focuses on a couple, two women who are a couple. They're newly together, and one, it's her first kind of lesbian experience. The other one has been a lesbian all her life, and they are running off to California together to start a new life. Along the way, they stop off at a kind of rest point when they're abducted by this crazed family. Who have a kind of Leatherface style sort of son who is disturbed and you know, very kind of Leatherface coded, shall we say, and they want one of the women to be his wife, and they held these two women captive who have got to try and use their wits to escape. What will happen? You'll have to watch the movie and find out. So I have to say, originally this movie passed me by purely because it's kind of somewhat sort of innocuous title. You know, it's very much just sounds like a standard drama movie. It doesn't really scream horror film, if you ask me. But here it is, and I've watched it, and it very much is like kind of Texas Chainsaw Massacre style film. So if you like those sort of hicks, hillbillies, weird locals, deformed people, then check it out. So let's talk about what I think works. Now, I think one of the strengths of this movie is the believability and strength of performances by our two central protagonists. So we see this couple meet for the first time, and they kind of don't really know each other, but they decide to go to California together. But I believed it. I believed their relationship, and I believed their kind of interaction seemed quite genuine. So I've got to say, I think the actors and the movie do a good job here of making these characters very kind of likeable characters, believable characters where you, even though they've only really just met, you still buy their sort of romance, if that makes sense, and you kind of go along with it, and you kind of want them to succeed, and they're kind of quite different in regards to their sort of personalities and stuff, but you do buy into their sort of their characters, and I think, you know, it's testament to the writing, the performances, and obviously the direction. So very good protagonists, very well played. And, you know, we have some kind of our antagonists to this kind of family, which I will admit they're kind of a little bit too similar to what you've seen before, but they're still sort of somewhat interesting characters in their own right. And, you know, they seem to have kind of a bit of a history where they seem to have been abducting women, so they do come across as quite sinister. I think it's filmed on this kind of large, it looks like, I think it takes place in this kind of farmhouse really, which is a huge farmhouse, and then we presume obviously kind of somewhat kind of rural and stuff. And what I liked about this movie as well was our women have to use their wits really. They obviously physically will struggle to overpower this kind of Leatherface guy. But they have to kind of use their wits really, and that's kind of what they do. And it's a film where they have multiple attempts to escape, but a lot of them end up being, you know, unsuccessful or only kind of partially successful. The women also really go through the ringer. The pair of them, and it's hard to say which has it worse really. But yeah, the pair of these women really are put through the absolute kind of ringer. So it does feel like it's pure sort of strength of character. The movie tries to have a little bit of commentary on small town kind of attitudes towards more metropolitan style life, should we call it that. It doesn't dwell too much on that, but it's obviously a theme in the movie here. So you've kind of got small town attitudes compared to, you know, more sort of modern scenarios, shall we put it like that. So, you know, there's a little bit of kind of social commentary on it. I think the actual kind of the movie's very well shot. It's not an overly gory film, but I do think there's certainly some uncomfortable sequences here. So, you know, it's certainly a fun addition if you like the kind of the wrong turns, the Texas Chainsaw Massacres, the Hills Have Eyes style films. It's not quite as sort of it's more, in a way, it's a cross between a thriller and a horror, I would say. It doesn't lean as much into horror as maybe some of those, but certainly I would still class it as a horror film. It doesn't work for me. I mean, like I said, maybe it flies a little bit too close to the sun in regards to having this kind of family. Like, it's three people, this family. It's the mother, the father, and the son, who is the kind of the Leatherface stand-in. And it's a case of why is he wearing a mask? I mean, if it's just the family on a sort of secluded farm, why is he wearing a mask? It's just to kind of look scary, but it doesn't story-wise, it doesn't really sort of make any sense why he would be doing that. So there's some things here that I think are just done for purely aesthetic reasons rather than having kind of story reasons. We were also led to believe that they have kidnapped a bunch of other women and killed them, because we see skeletons, we see like a vat of acid where they've clearly been trying to kind of dispose of the bodies and things like that, and the skeletons and stuff. But I mean, again, there's no way, we have no idea of how they've got away with it. I mean, there is a potential partial explanation for some of the police, but again, surely people would have gone missing around this area over a kind of a period of time, and I think it takes place in 2009, so that you probably wouldn't have GPS, I suppose, on the photos, which is probably why they've decided to set it then. But again, there would still be, it isn't quite clear how they've been kind of getting away with it, because it doesn't seem like they're especially rural. It just seems like they're in a kind of like more of a kind of a farm area and stuff, and the other thing I had a problem with as well is like how they are getting these women, because they just happen to kind of, are they just hanging out by the side of the road hoping people are kind of like decide to pull over for a sleep? I mean, that's what basically kind of happens. It just seems very sort of like, how long have you got to be hanging around there for someone to actually do that? There's a few sort of things here to me that didn't quite kind of make sense, and are just kind of like hand wavy. This is the way the plot wants to go, so we're kind of just going to ignore some of these sort of small sort of logic issues. I think the performances of our two central protagonists are very strong. The performances of our antagonists, they're still okay, but not quite as strong, I would say. Maria Olsen is the mother here, and you've seen her in a bunch of kind of horror films, but I think she was a little bit hamming it up a bit, I have to say. Overall, it's a solid movie though, and it's well worth watching if you like this sort of style of films. I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. Have you seen it? What were your thoughts? Leave me a comment, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.
I hear someone might have the Jimmy Smiths.